Welcome, listeners, to the latest episode of the AdQuick Madvertising Podcast, a podcast that talks about the intersection of business, technology, marketing, all of the things that you care about. Today, we have a special guest on the episode. We have John Stringer. He is the president and founder of the Tesla Owners of Silicon Valley community, where he talks about building community online, Tesla, the state of automotive advertising, and so much more. John, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome, John.
Thank you both for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while and can't wait to discuss more with you about the Tesla community, advertising, and anything else we want to get into.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you. We've been wanting to have on industry and vertical specific guests, and I think auto is such a fun one to start with. So we really appreciate you being here. Just to start things off, do you want to tell us, and especially for listeners who have no idea, what exactly the Tesla owner Silicon Valley is?
Yeah, I feel like that that question is so broad now, especially with how much we've just expanded. I founded the club about 5 years ago, back in 2018. So what the club is, we're actually an official partner to Tesla, hence why we get to utilize their logo in our actual banner. But what we are is a community of owners and obviously advocates of the Tesla mission, which is to push the world to a sustainable future. And so we're a nonprofit organization, obviously a group of owners that is passionate about really all things that Tesla is doing and really helping push that mission forward. But what our community actually looks like can be various things, from holiday toy drives to beach cleanups to running cars and coffee. We're doing a track day next weekend. And also, too, we run the largest Tesla community event really in the world. It's called the Tesla Takeover, or X Takeover. And we had Elon's mom, Maye Musk, this past month come as our keynote speaker. So ultimately, we're just a community of owners trying to be a resource to new owners, new Tesla owners, enthusiasts, to really just push the Tesla mission forward and really just bring the Tesla community together worldwide, really.
And Tesla users are a pretty passionate group. Are there other auto brands that have this sort of thing online now that have sort of self-formed? Like, is there an Audi owners Silicon Valley? Is there like a, Ford owners New York? Is this kind of a thing that only you guys do?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely other car enthusiast groups out there, but I don't think they're as wired as we are or as passionate as we are. I mean, obviously, you have BMW owners of North America. There's Porsche clubs. There's like Honda S2000 groups. So there's a bunch of those, like civic groups as well. But none of them are not only enthusiasts of the product, but also advocates of, pushing Tesla's mission forward, or really the car company's mission forward.
And so, it's interesting that Tesla has sort of made it official with you, because typically what I've seen on the brand side is that, brands kind of have they have communities of people that sort of organically form around the brand. And sometimes they do things with them. Sometimes they send a little bit of swag. So it seems kind of unique that Tesla has embraced sort of organic marketing, because I know at the same time they don't really do, or they're just starting to think about paid marketing and paid advertising, which I know is a new thing for them.
Yeah, it's totally. So what's interesting about the owners program, right, is it's, not only is there a bunch of clubs in North America, but there's also all over Europe and parts of Asia. And so anywhere where a Tesla is sold, there can be a Tesla owners group there. The program is kind of somewhat being sunset in that no clubs are going to be able to be added. So it's almost kind of like legacy in some ways. But I can't tell you, I've been able to go to travel places like Japan and meet other like-minded folks. I've been to Hong Kong. I've been to the Austria Club hosted me last year to come as a keynote speaker. And they literally gave me a Model S and rolled out the red carpet just to host me while I was there. But I pretty much, and I met the owners of the Netherlands when I went out to Amsterdam. So I can pretty much go anywhere in the world and just meet like-minded folks. And so as we know, right, if anyone has really gotten their Tesla, once you drive it, it can really be a life-changing experience. Like for myself, I drove 70 miles a day pre-COVID and spending about 2.5 hours in traffic. To have autopilot or navigate on autopilot, and obviously what is now called FSD beta, really changes the game. Especially I'm a young father of 4, and so to be able to get home and to be able to not be so stressed out from the stop and go, it was really a kind of a life-changing moment in some ways. So not to sell the Tesla brand per se, but it's just like it really was. And so for me, like, I want to tell my friends and my family about, this experience and how much it can really just change their whole driving experience, or really what the expectation of what a car should be. And given, to answer your question, I know it's a little bit long-winded, but given the fact that, Tesla has really a Cinderella story. This company almost went bankrupt in 2008 and 2018. Production hell. Elon Musk is sleeping on the ground of the Fremont factory. And so it's like you have the Cinderella story, and now obviously it's the biggest automotive brand, if not just brand, one of the top 5 brands probably in the world now. But that's really like what built the community, is just, if you've been around, a lot of the community is really new. So they've been around maybe 2-3 years, but if you've been around 4 or 5 years, you've really seen the kitchen sink for what this company, even what Elon's been through. And again, the adjustment into really being like the number 1 automotive brand. And in a lot of ways, it's weird saying automotive because there's so much more than that now, right? It's not like they're just a car company. It's like calling Apple an iPhone company or something, or a phone company.
Sure. I have a lot more Tesla questions, but I wanted to ask one about how you know Chris. So I know there's some history there, and I sense there's a story afoot.
Do you want to go, or can I go? You can go.
You do it. No, you go for it, man.
Well, I guess I'll talk about the inspiration. So John and I connected over a billboard campaign, I want to say in February of 2022, just to kind of set the what was going on in the world at the time. This was, I think, post-COVID. People were peak at their wits' end on getting gaslighted or being lied to by mainstream media, or just blatant stuff getting shoved down their throats that were absolutely not true. And there was this couple month period where the administration was gaslighting the entire country and saying, General Motors and General Motors and Ford are leading the way in EV. And you look at the financials, and it's like Q4 2021 shipments of, like, I don't know, don't quote me on the number, but it was sub 500 total.
26 for GM.
And I, having lived in the Bay Area, I remember, seeing 1 Tesla on the road, and then we started seeing 5, and then we started seeing 10. And then, by 2021, given all the challenges that John has mentioned, our friends at Tesla, like the employees that were actually building this shit, they reached an incredible milestone of, like, I think the Q4 deliveries were at like a 1.2 million run rate annually. And I think in 2021, they shipped like damn near close to a million cars. And that's an impressive feat because nobody's done that since Henry Ford, right? So I thought that it was incredibly poor taste that the government was gaslighting all of America. And so we got a billboard in Times Square, and I was like, who could I team up with this on? And, when, despite what the administration was saying about how this was, the number 1 is, the legacy automakers, which was not true. We put up, we took emojis, and we bought like a cube billboard in Times Square. On one panel facing the folks, you had 3 emojis: a gold medal icon, an electric lightning bolt, and a car emoji. And then on the other side was a screenshot of Elon's tweet where it's like, starts with a T, ends with an S, or ends with an A, ESL in the middle for being number 1. And I had the specs and I had the designs drawn up, and I messaged John on Twitter, then or on X, then Twitter. And I was like, hey, would you like to team up with me on this? Because I think a lot of us are getting tired of hearing this nonsense. And I don't know what your take was in working with me, but I'd love to hear how you felt on the other end.
Yeah, well, first off, I was felt really privileged that someone doing all of the stuff you do, obviously for AdQuick and everything else. It was truly a privilege, but also too to just put us on, because I think we actually did like multiple billboards. I think you did the first one, it was the Elon Musk one, and then you even we did I believe it was the over the air is not a recall.
Yeah, that's right.
Your update is not a recall, and so because I think I think it's the NHTSA or whatever, I'm going to probably pronounce that wrong. They are saying all of these updates are essentially, or they're calling all these things recalls, but it's literally with Tesla, all they have to do is send a software update and they've dealt with the issue, versus like if it's any other company, they actually, even if it's an EV, you would actually have to bring it to the dealership and do the update via their at the dealership. But for me, like when you hit me up, it was totally like, it's not something that I had ever done or been a part of before. So it was kind of like a little bit unreal. I was like, this is like really going to happen. Like we're going to do like multiple billboards. And so it was just really, really, really privileged to have that. And I know Elon saw it as well. Remember, I believe he liked it. And so it's really, and I think even Maye
thanked us for it. Yeah, we'll share the tweets in the show notes once this goes live. But that was enough. I was like, okay, Elon's mom thanked us. We won Twitter today.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was cool, but I mean, this is the story of Tesla. In general, is just facing an insane amount of fake news, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And the mainstream media just skewing all of the, their articles for clickbait to put Tesla in a certain spotlight. And so that's just kind of been the story, and even really the story of like our club of just fighting the fake news. And so, when Chris hit me up, it just made perfect sense, because there's just certain people that have either bought a Tesla or sat in a Tesla or know the journey. And they just know like the stuff that people are saying is completely false. And Chris, to say a little bit about what you were saying about, it was GM in, I think it was Q4 of 2021. They put out 26 EVs that quarter. And yet at the EV summit, which Tesla was not invited to, because I think it's because their Tesla's not unionized, but they were essentially not invited to the EV summit. And the current administration was like, oh, GM and Mary Barra is the leader in this space, when Tesla produced over 300,000 vehicles in that same quarter. And it's like, we're actually bringing manufacturing back to America, making American manufacturing awesome, bringing the suppliers back rather than importing that out, which every other auto company is doing. And so, you can say that Teslas are the most American made car. And it just made absolute no sense at all. So it was, to be able to do those things with AdQuick, with Chris, was absolutely a blast. And just, it's all part of the amazing journey that like our club's been on, but also too just meeting amazing people along the way that are kind of like-minded, that also too want to just, get the right information out there.
Yeah, and like we now live in a kind of like this weird period where people are arguing about what is true and what is not true. But I mean, financial statements are financial statements, and that stuff's getting published. So,
exactly.
That's why it took off. And for our audience of marketers, and you want to know what the Elon effect is. When John and I teamed up on these 2 billboard campaigns and put them out into the wild, they went gangbusters, because we're calling it as we saw it. But if you're wondering from a metrics perspective what that looked like, all of our metrics went up between 29 and 46,000% that week. So like, one of Alexis Ohanian, founder of Reddit, led our Series A And one of the things that he likes billboard advertising, why he likes billboard advertising the most, is because of that manufactured virality that is always a possibility. And that just reinforced it to me that this is something special, and this medium can be paired with online, or with social media and getting the word out.
So, John, that actually brings up a great question, because you had such a great experience with out-of-home advertising. You're in Silicon Valley, so you know all about the benefits of really well-done advertising and marketing. And I tend to think some engineers tend to have this bias against any paid marketing, and they're like, oh, it's this channel that you shouldn't have to do to grow. But I've found that has hamstrung a lot of startup founders who just, they get a mental bias about something because a certain venture capitalist or certain startup founder said not to do it. But if you were to take a pragmatic first principles approach, you would see advertising as just another way to reach people. So do you think, I know Tesla is kind of a, unique snowflake, but do you think they're starting to talk about doing paid marketing now and paid ads? Do you think it's a mistake that they waited this long? Like, could they have done this sooner and maybe hit accelerant on the organic marketing? Do you have a take on this at all?
Yeah, no, it's the advertising question has been the taboo question for the past several years, really, even in the Tesla community. But I think Tesla's starting to get to a brand point now where, the Elon effect, the Tesla effect, its reach is only so far, right? And now it's about informing the everyday person about Tesla in general, or about what they're doing. So, for example, basic things like the cost of ownership of a Tesla is cheaper than a Toyota Corolla over a 5-year period, which is mind-blowing, because the Model 3 is a lot more expensive than the Toyota Corolla. People still think that Teslas are these like luxury vehicles that are super expensive, not affordable, and that just the rich own it. But that's absolutely not the case anymore. And so there's just this, like, I think Elon got this. I actually went to the shareholder meeting where I think it was Meet Kevin who asked the question about advertising to push him to do it. It was just one of those things where it's like, in a lot of ways, like, Elon is really just preaching to the choir. Like, a lot of his base, a lot of the, he's got obviously the most followed people on X, and, got just a huge, obviously, a huge effect of things that he could say obviously will make the news, but it's not going to necessarily be about Tesla being in a positive light. So you have, again, this issue with just the everyday person. They have certain perceived thoughts about Tesla, whether it's expensive, whether it's, maybe they still are worried about range anxiety. And so there's a lot of knowledge. So when I think of the advertising that they need to do, it's just about informing people. It's not even just saying, like, they don't need to spend a bunch of money telling, just about like the experience and everything else. They just need to inform people about, how cheap these vehicles are, about how to deal with range anxiety, the cost of ownership, and then all of the incentives that are even happening right now, where some parts of California, you can get into a Model 3 for $19,000. I think that's the San Joaquin Valley. So it's just absolutely insane. But that's what the advertising should look like going forward. It's about informing people on how amazing these products are, because that's what they've done. Like, innovation is at their core and their roots. And so they don't care. I think Elon had got some hate for this because he said patents are stupid, where they're innovating at like, they don't, they don't want to be held down to just making sure, oh, we got to get this patent, that patent. It's like, they're just innovating in a way.
They open source everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you could literally be GM and say, I want to go make an exact Model 3 and then just stick GM on it. You could, if you wanted to do that. Because again, they're about innovation and getting to a sustainable future. But yeah, that's really what's at their core, is just innovation and technology, and being a software-based first company. And that's what ultimately, I think he has always said, the thing that will give them the biggest competitive advantage is their manufacturing, which is insane to think of that. So Like it's not going to be these patents that's keeping other people from, manufacturing or utilizing their information or their technology. It's going to specifically be, how they continue to innovate is going to keep them, ahead of everyone. So sorry, that was a very long-winded answer, but yeah, for advertising, I think it's just about general information and getting that information to the public, not necessarily like you'll see with some of these, other legacy auto and how they'll advertise on the Super Bowl and other stuff, and they're just giving you like specs. Like the specs don't matter for Tesla anymore. It's like they're already the king when it comes to the EV.
Yeah. So like, I'd like to think that I'm just going to flat out say it, we're probably more online than most people. There's a phrase on Twitter. It's like people who are terminally online. And so a lot of these communities, such as your own, but there's folks like Farzad Misbah. He's got a YouTube channel. Sawyer Merritt's on Twitter. He's doing stuff. The Mars blog is doing some great work. What channels have been kind of representative of that growth story for the Tesla community, and how can upstart brands who are doing something new and disruptive think about building their early adopter group? And when I use early adopter, I mean that in the context of like, Jeffrey Moore Crossing the Chasm shit, where it's like, okay, let's say Tesla has its first like couple million customers. We're still in the early stages. How do we get to 100 million? But I think for brands in our audience, it's like you got to think about how do you start that fire? Where do you go? And so what are you seeing in terms of channels? Do you see like I'm not on Instagram too much, but like, are there like Instagram influencers doing Tesla stuff? Kind of fill me in on that world.
Yeah. So Tesla is a unique story. So I don't want to say that Tesla, like someone can create an amazing product and then, it could just like take off. Obviously it does in a lot of cases, it does start at, if you make an amazing product that is solving real world problems, and also too, not only real world problems, but also is solving and really changing the game in whatever industry that you're in. It's important to obviously continue to build that, and that is going to happen through online communities. I think what's really special about Twitter or Twitter then and now X is it's one of the flattest platforms. And so it's really one of the coolest ways to engage in your community, especially again if you're building a solid base of owners, because people can interact at any level, whether you have 100 followers, whether you have a blue check mark or not blue check mark, or the verification. I think X is a really, really cool way to just get a sense of what's going on in your community. I think some of the other apps out of there, it makes it really hard to reach people. So yes, there are a lot of influencers on TikTok, Instagram, and even Facebook. But I think what makes it hard is how do you connect with those people? And X, I think, is an interesting. It's been an interesting platform to watch and to grow on, because you can have that direct access, and I think that's what makes Tesla specifically, or more importantly, Elon. You can have that direct access to him, ask him questions, get feedback live from him, tell him how the product is good or bad. Specifically on a platform, and he'll interact. And so I think that's the biggest thing that some of these other platforms have an issue with, is that direct connection to people of these, like, that are very, very high up the chain. A quick shout out to obviously even like TikTok and Instagram. I think TikTok, where their king is virality and discoverability. They're unmatched. Like I posted a video the other day of the Tesla Semi, which is still, I think people think it's vaporware, and it got 1.5 million views. Literally, I think it was like last week. And, just being able to build a following, you get 1.5 million views, you can get up to anywhere, I think 3,000 to 5,000 followers and more. And so it really just, I think it's really comes down to what is the product that you're building, And if it's a product that's very compelling, then you're going to have people that are going to become very passionate about it, and they're going to want to talk about it and tell other people about it. So then it really becomes important for you to meet that demand and to know, like, okay, do we have a compelling product that is going to get people very excited? When they get up, they're going to want to tell their neighbor, their family members, their spouses, their partners, whoever. And if you are, then you need to be ready to, have that direct communication. And I think there's certain platforms that allow for that better than others. So I think, so we personally have been on X, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, and obviously YouTube, because YouTube is obviously still the king when it comes to just like long form and even kind of short, probably more long form videos, but just on getting information out there. There's no other platform like it. But it's just really important to communicate to those people and keep them hungry. That's how we even grew as a club, was just always making sure no matter how big we get, we can still come down and still communicate to the everyday follower that with 200 or 300 people. So hopefully that answered your question. I don't know if I, but yeah.
Absolutely, and I thank you for that. But it's just really insane. I imagine with all the fans come haters. Have you encountered any folks that that have given you a hard time?
Honestly, it's endless. I think so there's a couple of differences in when it comes to haters. I think when I think of the initial, like 2018, 2019, really, again, the Tesla community was fighting fake news. When I say neighbor, I had a person that lives a couple exits away from me post a video on, again, at the time, Twitter. He posted a video of autopilot taking him into a wall. Again, this is 2 exits up from my house. And so I literally saw that. I was like, he's not even showing his hands. He's probably doing something. And I said, I've taken that exit a bunch of times. And so I went and recreated that video. And in a lot of ways, there was a couple of big accounts that were paying it forward and retweeted and got the video out there to kind of like set the record straight on that specific video. But that was kind of like the haters back then were actually people that were shorting the company, people that could taste blood on this company failing. Those were the haters then. The people you deal with right now are, probably what most people who tend to have success face. It's just people that are jealous and they want a piece of the pie, and they want to kind of take you down and for you to pull you out in a way where they can expose you and then really just like jump on you. And I think what's frustrating about that, especially from my perspective, is that, I'm building, a community of owners. We're a nonprofit. And so this stuff is not for profit or for my own clout, whatever you want to call it. But it's really about just, helping the community. We donate, anywhere, depending on what's going on, anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 a year towards various initiatives. And so again, it's really about community building. It's not about me getting my moment in the sun. But unfortunately, as we've done the Elon Musk interview back in May of 2022. We just recently interviewed Maye Musk in San Luis Obispo at the Tesla Takeover just a month ago. And, even the next year's event, like the speaker lineup that we're building right now is just going to be potentially very phenomenal. Or it's going to be epic just to see it, to see that lineup. So we're still, finalizing some details there. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, when you are building a following, when you're building, kind of becoming a face of something, people are going to do your best to come after you. And I think the most important thing, at least that I've been learning, and again, this is not my full-time job, but is just ignore it, because, the more you engage in it, and I would say this may not be the Elon Musk way, but the more I've engaged in certain things, it gives that person their moment in the sun, and it brings it, if you're up here, you're bringing yourself down to their level, especially if they're trying to, especially in this cancel culture, people are just they want to become a victim. And as soon as they become a victim and they can take someone else down while they're becoming a victim, or they are a victim, they get that clout for a day or 2 days. But that's the crazy thing is, like, you may run somebody over, and get a 1 or 2 days of fame, but it's gone the next day. And so that's the thing. It's like, so at least, I've had situations, I've made my fair bag of mistakes. So it's important for me. I'll own up to it. I'll talk to the person, go directly to them, apologize, and see what the path forward is. But it's best just not to engage. But yeah, so to answer your question, you will always face haters as you are growing and people see success. They're going to want to tear you down especially, that's the weird thing, especially with us. I don't get it, because we're just a community of owners, and sure, I've kind of become the face of the club and stuff, and in some ways the Tesla community. In some ways, it's just I don't get why people want to come after us, the club, and other things.
You should try considering starting an online marketplace for outdoor advertising.
Exactly.
I don't think people were ready for having physical ads being readily measurable and being able to be purchased online, which changes the power dynamics quite a bit. So we can relate.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Adam, you want to take the next one?
Sure. So you're obviously passionate about autos. It seems like one of the mission, like a larger mission, even beyond Tesla, was to popularize EVs. And I would say at this point, it seems like that mission is like it's not, we can't declare success yet because there's not like chargers everywhere, but now there's a ton of companies developing EVs. So I'm actually curious, beyond Tesla, like what brands do you like? What brands do you not like? I know you're going to say Tesla's the best because they're the furthest ahead. And I totally, I'm sure that's true. I actually haven't driven an EV, so I personally don't know, but I'm curious, like, what do you think other brands are doing that's kind of cool? Maybe like now there's even more competition. I'm curious, like, where the space is at, because I know there were a few, like, some other companies that like sort of IPO'd and rise and fell, and I'm curious, like, what the competitive landscape's like.
Yeah, so there's definitely there's the landscape, or there's I guess there's multiple people in the EV space now, right? You have kind of like the newer companies like the Rivians, the Lucids. Then you have Legacy Auto, which would be Ford, GM, Mercedes, Volkswagen. Daimler, I guess, is the parent company of Mercedes. But yeah, like you have all of these Legacy Auto, who are obviously in the space as well, who are just making an impact and making EVs even at this point. But really, so to answer your question, the companies that I'm probably most excited about outside of Tesla, one would be Rivian. I think they're making a great truck. They're really trying to take the outdoor experience and take it to the next level. They have two cars right now. One is the truck, and then one is the SUV. I've seen, so the R1T, the truck, and the R1S is the SUV. I'm a huge fan of the R1S. I have, again, a young family, a big family. So it's like to see that EV is really exciting. I think the good thing is, though, is that with those new companies, they're starting fresh. They don't have this old ball and chain like the ICE cars that they have to essentially navigate through. Because right now, like, you have like Ford and GM who have publicly stated that they will not have a profitable EV this decade, which is absolutely mind blowing. So they're in this weird spot where it's like they're trying to invest in this new space, which is electric vehicles, and yet they have this ball and chain, which is ICE vehicles, which is still actually a lot more profitable. So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, you need to invest all of this money in this new technology, in this new space we're going into. But at the end of the day, we're losing a crap load of money. Like even Lucid is, they're ramping their volume, and they're having their growth struggles. Same thing with Rivian. But it's harder it's easier when you're a brand new company. You don't have, you have a fresh start, and you can kind of build your own destiny in some ways, right? You can build your own your own car without the ball and chain of having this huge organization, and you're still pumping out millions of vehicles like all of these other companies. So out of the legacy auto, I think the other company that I'm excited about is Ford. I think that Jim Farley is probably the most forward-thinking CEO within legacy auto. I think you even saw some weird stuff that happened with VW, where the old president, I think, was like fired because, he was very much pushing electric vehicles, and there's a whole thing that happened with that. But Ford is they have the Mustang Mach-E, the F-150 Lightning, and obviously several other vehicles coming out. They were the first to adopt the North American Charging Standard, which is the Tesla standard, which essentially is the cable that you plug in. It's very easy, right? Any Tesla owner will tell you it takes literally 10 seconds to charge your car. You just plug it in, take it out, especially because the gas station for electric vehicles is your house, unless you're traveling across the country. So people don't realize that. Like when you buy an iPhone, you don't think about how much you're charging, or how long it'll take to charge the phone from 20 to 80%. It's the same thing with electric vehicles. Like my house is my own gas station. But yeah, so it's one of those things where the landscape is developing. I would say the legacy auto is absolutely screwed. Jim Farley, again, he's the CEO of Ford. He provided this comment on Fully Charged several months back. And, so on the front, you see Ford, but imagine you're a startup, and you go to 500 other companies to make different pieces of your company. But they're all, and they go into, at least for legacy auto, they go into this auto bidder. So you don't even really get to choose who the person who's going to make the part is. But it goes into this auto bidder, and then whoever has the best bid or the lowest bid, whatever, it's made up of a couple things, they get it. But then they go and develop it and write it in their own coding and everything else. But now imagine having 500 or 600 other companies come together and build one software that helps the whole computer or the whole car communicate to it. So now you have these legacy auto is going from being like hardware manufacturing. They need to like halt, like big red flags, like, and change into a software company overnight. And that transition has been absolutely brutal for them, and they're feeling it. And so in a lot of ways, I think, the dominoes are going to continue to fall in favor of Tesla. They adopted their charging standard, number one. Number two, I think that they're going to adopt their software at some point, because I don't think these companies know how to write software. Other than, again, the Rivians and the Lucids. Again, Ford's probably the most forward thinking out of those companies. But really, so yeah, so to answer your story, long story short, those are the companies I'm interested in, but also at the same time, the other companies, Legacy Auto has this insane uphill battle in this mountain, Mount Everest, that they have to somehow climb over.
Yeah, so you answered one of the follow-up questions I was going to have, which is like, how does software taken into consideration by the legacy auto manufacturers? Sounds like it's opened up, but it's not adopted yet. But I think what you have been describing, and I'm going to go PTSD to my MBA days, innovator's dilemma, as presented by Clayton Christensen, renowned like HBS scholar, Harvard Business School guy that we read the fucking case studies in MBA for. But so the OEMs standing for original equipment manufacturers, they have to. So what you're saying is that the companies that are going to win going forward are going to be the ones that are more vertically integrated and have all these production capabilities in house, right? So like not necessarily assembling a vehicle, but manufacturing it from soup to nuts. Is that kind of,
that's going to be or again, they're going to have to outsource the software that is ultimately going to have to be integrated with all of the other pieces. But the more that they outsource it, that because I guess what I'm trying to say is they've already outsourced everything. So now, like, I think even in the case of Ford is like, no, we want to write our own software and everything else. But I don't know how they're going to be able to keep up or even match what Tesla is doing as far as software, as far as full self-driving. And so that's why I think the next domino to fall is going to be people licensing Tesla software to communicate with the rest of the car. And yeah, you said it right, is that the only way that these companies will really be able to compete is bringing everything, not necessarily in-house, but I think they're going to have to, or they're going to have to create the standard of like, okay, if you're going to be making these parts, you need to be writing it in this code, in this language. And these are the standards. They're going to have to do all of that. But again, now you're talking about the suppliers who make one piece on a Ford, but they're also making probably pieces on Toyota and other places. The suppliers are going to have to re-engineer the way that they're thinking. Mm-hmm. Because they only care about that one piece that they're sticking on the car. They don't care about writing some software to then communicate back to like one computer that's going to like take in all that information, right?
Yeah, I mean, so like business models aside and organizational structures aside, there's still going to be a fair degree of objection handling that needs to happen on behalf of Legacy Auto, because their target customers or their existing customer base, I would imagine, is probably reluctant to, consider an electric car. Like I've been in, electric, Legacy EVs from Legacy Auto manufacturers, and they're great. Like, I mean, they're already taking monumental steps. I remember when hybrids came out, and we had like a half gas, half electric, and that was an absolute shit show. But the pure electric stuff that's coming out of the Legacy Auto companies are, I mean, to somebody who's not a automotive, like a car fiend or a car fanatic, I'm not. I would imagine that the folks that are the biggest buyers of ICE cars are going to need some convincing. And so, do you think that some of these community building approaches can be leveraged by Legacy Auto to kind of help folks think about making that switch to something electric?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was Legacy Auto, and I think, again, I've seen Ford kind of embrace this. But yeah, like, so if you leave, like, again, more of the newer companies like the Rivians and the Lucids, who are brand new, who, are starting they have a good ownership base and following. But yeah, as you are launching these these cars, like a Mustang or the Mustang Mach-E or the Ford Lightning, these companies should be building some type of community that brings people together to inform people. So like, what's great about our club is that when you buy a Tesla, we are the next step of your journey. If you're living in the Bay Area, or if you just want to have a resource to ask questions like, where should I go get my car wrapped? I'm taking a trip to Yosemite. Where do I charge? Or I'm looking for these accessories. What should I do? Or if I want to hang out with other, Model 3 owners, X owners, S owners, X owners, or Y owners, like, let's do a meetup. Let's go grab some Starbucks and talk about it. Like, that definitely, like, these online communities are going to be, I think, vital, especially for that early adoption. And I think for EVs, really the biggest issue with adoption outside of Tesla is going to be the charging network. Because if you own like a Porsche Taycan, if you own like a Ford Lightning, your biggest issue is you may actually turn up to, like, today, I'm talking today, not about, because all these companies are adopting the North American charging standard, and at some point they will be able to utilize the Tesla network. But if I'm driving from, San Jose to Seattle, and let's say my wife is just meeting me up there because I have a work trip or something, it's not a guarantee that she's going to be able to get to every charging stop and have no issues. She's probably going to roll up to an Electrify America situation, and it's not going to be working. And imagine, you have 10 miles of range, and that's the only supercharger in the middle of like nowhere. Where do you go? Because the reliability is so, like, Tesla standards up here, and these guys aren't even like, there's a couple, again, great companies that are doing some good stuff like EVgo, Blink, ChargePoint. But again, it's just, there's still a gap, because even those companies, they don't have enough stations out there. And so that's why it's huge that Tesla's going to be opening up their network. But again, I think the biggest thing for converting from an ICE car to an EV is still going to be, again, outside of the Tesla world, is the charging network.
I mean, yeah, because like if we're going to pull it back to like an advertising and marketing from a marketing and advertising lens, We're used to seeing big auto, drop commercials on us with big red bows on cars around the holiday times.
Yep.
And, I think part of the reason, and this was, I think, brilliant on Elon's part with Tesla not advertising it till this point, is like, you don't want to, dump a bunch of, you don't want to dump buckets into a leaky funnel, right? And so I would imagine that the leaky funnel is either manufacturing capacity or whatever, what have you, or whatever challenges they're facing at the moment. So the community aspect actually might be more compelling than dropping a bunch of ads for EVs that may or may not deliver on the customer's expectation.
Exactly. And I think, Tesla, again, that's why this model, it's not necessarily replicable to every OEM or other company. But finding owners that are passionate about your product. You could probably say this in general. Right. The best, the best advertising is word of mouth, right? Obviously you guys would know better than me. But I think that's the important thing with Tesla and how it's done so well is they have owners that are passionate about the product and they want to tell other people because the product is that compelling. And if you're an OEM, launching these other cars, you need to find those owners that are passionate about your cars and then empower them in whatever way. Give them a platform, put them up on a pedestal and let them yell at the top of their lungs like, hey, buy this car, this is why it's great. Yeah, it may not have this compared to the other companies, but this is still what makes it a compelling product.
Yeah, and I imagine that in the coming months, maybe 6 to 9 months, as more Cybertrucks hit the road, that'll be its own form of advertising, right? Because it's just so starkly different. It should function, and I want Adam's take on this, but like, in what capacity will a Cybertruck act as a billboard for the company, right? Because it's fucking out there. It is a wild looking car, and I haven't been excited about a car like ever. And like I'm like now starting to poke around and be like, okay, how do I get on this waiting list and all that stuff?
Chris, we need to get a AdQuick wrapped Cybertruck for you to drive around.
Let's work on that. 100%.
I'm all about that.
John, I have one other question, because you probably know a lot about this, and I used to be into like car mod culture when I was like 15 and 16, and I would always go to the local auto show in South Florida, and you'd see, tricked out, Integras and Mustangs and all this.
Yep.
I'm curious, in an EV world and Tesla and other brands, is there an aftermarket for mods? I'd assume that exists. I'm curious, what does that look like?
Yeah, so it's actually funny you're asking that because at the Tesla Takeover, again, we had 2,000 people back at the end of July. We had over 35 super modified Teslas, and then a whole just like custom section. So that culture of like just kind of like the modded nuts out there definitely exists. It's thriving in the EV community. There's even there's like a couple of great modded like brands out there like Played Out, Ruined, who are like they're locally based in California. And so, but yeah, there's a lot that you can do with your EV. From air suspension to obviously a lot of the fascia to like just putting insane amount of ambient lighting throughout the whole car. And then there's just like other things like that you can like spoilers, and a lot of stuff you can do internally. So it's going to look a little bit different. I think that the modded nuts who love just like getting in there with the engine, you can still do that. You can still, get into your Tesla and just change up a lot. But again, it kind of will look a little bit different, but there definitely is a whole modified Tesla culture out there. And it's only growing. Like, one of the things I'm looking forward to most next year at the X Takeover is literally going to be the modified Cybertrucks. It's going to be absolutely ridiculous because The type of wheels that people are going to put on this thing, even the Baja 1000, like going out on sand dunes, and like people are just going to be absolutely insane with what they're going to do with these trucks. You think of the Raptor, the Ford Raptor culture. It's gonna put that to shame, and so there's definitely like a whole modded culture out there for EVs and Teslas.
Yeah, I'm glad that mod culture isn't going to go away. I knew there'd be aftermarket for all sorts of things. I remember back in the day, you used to have to get like a serial connector for your laptop to be able to go into like a BMW or Audi and change like the PSI boost on a turbo, or change some of the settings. And now in the Tesla, you just like one click, you're in insane mode, or however that works. And it's like it's kind of cool, because that's sort of it feels like if companies like Tesla didn't exist, like autos would just kind of be stuck, right? Like they weren't really thinking of the 10x idea, as we like to call in tech, right?
Totally. I mean, it's Tesla is the pioneer. They really reshaped and revamped the whole car industry by making the best product, the most compelling product, and doing it completely different. Even their manufacturing, like they're making these things called they're called iron castings. So they've deleted thousands, hundreds, if not several thousands of parts that most of these old legacy OEMs would use to create a car. But what they do is they essentially made like one piece, like the main part of the car is one piece. And because that they did that, not only does that make the car the safest car that you're going to be driving, because again, it's one metal piece versus like 15 metal pieces stuck together. So the structure is going to be absolutely solid. But it just has removed all of the pain points, and all of the amount of suppliers that they'll need. So they've just the manufacturing is unmatched. I believe the legacy autos are following suit. I think even Ford and some of these other companies are starting to do iron castings as well. But they also, not only did they revamp how cars are built, they also revamped like how they're run on, or what they're run on, which is software. And so, like for example, back to some of the stuff that the billboards that we did with AdQuick and Chris, was the fact that we said over-the-air updates are not recalls, right? And that's the idea, is that literally Tesla, all they have to do is just send a software update. It takes 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending on how big of the build it is, but 10, 20 minutes to update. And you could do it right before you go to bed, and you wake up to pretty much a brand new car. But whatever those issues are, like they can fix window issues. There was an issue with the stopping at stop signs, because in California there's just like the rolling stop, and so there's things like that they can just change by just updating some code, and that's it.
Awesome. Well, Chris, do you have any final questions? I got so much information about Tesla and EVs today. I've definitely learned a lot in the last hour.
Yeah, I would love John's take on one thing that our friend Paul, a friend of AdQuick's, kind of brought up, and I'd love your take on this. And I'm going to read it off the screen because he's like, now that I'm commuting to the office a few days a week, I'm using full self-driving autopilot on my Tesla. And I've noticed that I've been paying a lot more attention to billboards recently, because I'm not so focused on the minutia of driving, and I'm actually able to kind of look around. This is a dynamic that I don't think we've ever witnessed. And what does that mean for the future of outdoor advertising if the entire fleet of vehicles is moving towards a self-driving electric car?
Yeah. So to start, to kind of go back to even one of my stories, like I was talking about, driving 70 miles a day, and autopilot just takes over and just gets me through the mundane. But yeah, I mean, I'm a lot more relaxed when I get home. I'm a lot more patient, because I'm not just sick of the mundane, stop and go. So it's one of those things. I am more alert to what's going on. Like if I want to go look for Cybertrucks, or if I want to go look at, look at the other cars around me, or look at billboards, or look at signs that I'm so used to, that I've been passing for 15 years. You're just a lot more alert, because the drive, I think that's also one of the transitions from ICE to EVs, is it becomes more about the journey than it is about getting there, right? Like when I would drive down to college down in LA from San Francisco, I wanted to get there in 5.5 hours, and I was going as fast as I can, and making only one stop for gas. Versus now, it's like with electric vehicle owners, or Tesla owners, or people that are going to have these full self-driving capabilities. I would say there's going to be a ton of ads, obviously, in the cars themselves at some point, especially if you're driving like an Uber or Lyft. But then also, too, the owners are going to be looking up more. So I would assume that a lot more billboards, a lot more things like, just ads around you as you're like doing life will just become part of the norm. Because, again, I would say, like the driving experience is absolutely changing, and being able to get people's attention is going to be easier. I would say as full self-driving becomes more normal. Obviously, they're going to be probably glued to their phone as well. So that's another caveat to that, is like, yes, billboards will definitely become a thing. People are going to be a lot more relaxed and be able to pay attention to what's going on around them. But people are obviously potentially going to become a little bit more glued to their phones. So I would definitely say, like, billboards and advertising, the future is definitely very bright, especially just, as more owners don't become the ones driving. It's, but also too, even in the cars, right? That's going to be a potential, huge upside to that. And you're seeing it. I mean, you see it in some of these like yellow taxis and some of these other things. They already have like those little screens with advertising.
Everything is an ad network, right, Chris?
Correct.
Well, thank you, John, for giving our listeners an overview into digital communities, into Tesla and EVs, and a little bit into your passion for autos. I think it's so cool that Tesla and Rivian and all these other upstarts are creating a whole new class of car. It's almost unthinkable that we would have seen this even 10 years ago. So it's an exciting time for, I think, the auto industry. I think even if you talk to a lot of the legacy people, they're probably excited that, there's actually progress here and it's happening faster. So thank you, everyone, for listening. As usual, please like, comment, and subscribe. John, where can our listeners find you online to connect?
Yeah, so you can pretty much find us on every platform with the handle at Tesla Owners SV. For SV is for Silicon Valley. So feel free, or teslasiliconvalley.com.
Yeah, and John's humble, but like go to YouTube, and he's got a couple of videos where he interviews Elon about the formative stories of Tesla and like, what the mission is going forward, that have a couple million views a pop. They're fantastic to watch and listen to. I highly encourage everybody to check it out, in addition to stalking him on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. Thanks again, John.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks. We'll see everyone next week.